All right. So the recording has started. And again, welcome everyone to our mid-session Speak Out Nebraska. Speak Out Nebraska is an educational series we do during the legislative session, just to keep everyone informed about what's going on and what you can do to stay involved and what you can do to make your voice heard. So let's get some quick introductions going. Out Nebraska, that's us. Out Nebraska is a nonprofit focused on improving the lives of LGBTQ Nebraskans through education, celebration, and advocacy. We assume that a lot of y'all have heard of us before because you have found this presentation. If you're new to our work, that's kind of a brief overview. My name is Aaron. I use they, them, and he, him pronouns. I'm the community organizer without Nebraska. And again, yeah, this Speak Out Nebraska, basically we'll be talking about Nebraska's legislative session, where different LGBTQ related bills are, and what you can do about it. I'm going to pause real quick to go ahead and add closed captioning for folks. All right, there we go. So you can keep track while we're talking. All right. So kind of a quick overview of what we're doing today. Again, we're going to do a little bill recap, kind of talk about where the bills that we're tracking are, what's going on with them. And then we're going to talk about what you can do about it. And we're going to do some Q&A. It's kind of short and sweet this time to hopefully give us a chance to try and address folks' questions, because I know it's kind of been a whirlwind of a news cycle and of a legislative session. So let's dive into our bill recap. So briefly, I wanted to kind of cover again how a bill becomes a law in Nebraska. So bills are introduced in that first 10 days of legislative session. So that's like the first 2 weeks of January. And then from there, bills are assigned to committees. In committees, a small group of senators hear from the public about, what we think about the bill, if we have concerns, stories we have related to them. And then after committees, committee hearings have finished up. The last committee hearing was on Friday. The committee can either advance it, so they'll take a vote and vote to advance it out of committee. They'll hold on to it, or they will take a vote and it'll fail, or it'll die in committee. If it advances, it goes to the first of 3 rounds of debate. The first one is called general file. And again, things can be advanced. They could be advanced with amendments, or they can be voted on and fail. From there, they go on to select file. And again, same sort of process, advance, amend, fail. And they go on to the last round of debate, which is called final reading. And from there, it either passes or it doesn't. There isn't a chance to do any amendments in final reading. After final reading goes on to the governor, who can sign or decline to sign. And either way, that goes forward. A signature from the governor would say, yes, I endorse this. I'm happy with this. If they don't sign it, maybe they don't like it, but there's nothing they can do about it, or they don't feel like vetoing it. They also can decide to veto something. If it does get vetoed, it goes back to the legislature to then debate and vote to override. If it's sustained, it dies. So if they don't have enough votes to overcome a veto, it dies. If they do have enough votes to override the veto, then it passes and becomes law. So this is kind of our flow. Like I said, last week was the last time we had committee hearings, but a lot of bills are still in committee. They're being held on to or haven't been voted on yet. And we're starting to see bills starting to move on to general file. So if you're kind of wondering where in the process we are right now, here. These 2 boxes, we're in the things are moving on from committee and moving to general file. And we're starting to see some bills start to move through the process, though. I think off the top of my head, nothing has passed select file yet. The legislature has not passed any bills, which is a little uncommon. We can talk more about that later. For as far as like LGBTQ related bills, we are watching 16 bills. which you can see the full details on our website. Abby will go ahead and pop that link in the chat. We have a bill tracker that our legislative intern Audrey has been working on and updating as time has gone on. So shout out to Audrey and all the hard work she does. Again, like I said, last Friday, last of the committee hearings. Where we stand though, some bills, a lot of bills, most of the bills are still in committee. So they're still being either held on to, or those committee members are talking about them. And some bills have moved on to those initial rounds of debate. When it comes to the 16 bills we're tracking, here's where you can see where they are. We're not going to go through every single bill today, just because there are a lot of bills. And last time around, we actually did go into the bills. And if you did miss our initial Speak Out Nebraska, you can check out the recording on our website. But the majority of the bills we're watching, I should have counted, I want to say 11 bills are still held in committee. So the committee hasn't taken an action on it. 4 of them have moved on to general file, but have not been debated yet. And unfortunately, one of the bills that we oppose, LB 574, which we'll talk more about, it has moved to select file, that second round of debate. On this list, you'll see also a little asterisk by some of the bills. This means it's a yes. I'm going to actually explain priority designation right now. So a priority bill, plain and simple, is like a bill that a senator has noted, or a committee has noted, or the speaker has noted as one they want to pass. When something's a priority, it gets preference theoretically in when it's heard and when it is brought up for debate. The order of debate, though, is still determined by the speaker, who is Senator Arch this year. So he still gets to set the calendar of, when things are heard. But it does put pressure on the legislature to talk about it earlier, debate it earlier, set hearings earlier if it gets a really early priority designation. Something to just keep in mind too is each senator gets to pick 1 priority bill, and then I believe committees can choose up to 2. Or they might be able to choose more, but this year they all chose 2 bills. And then the speaker gets a full list of 25 bills. That's why, who the speaker is kind of important, because they get to set basically what the agenda is for the session. So most of the ones that have asterisks next to them are party bills by senator. So senators have chosen these negative bills, this positive bill, the abortion ban bill here, and then LB 630 is a priority bill that was chosen by the speaker. So just some information there. And then we picked 2 of these bills that we're following to highlight and talk a little bit more about, so folks can take the opportunity to contact their senators or tell their friends about this bill that they learned about. The first one is that 630 I just mentioned. I've put a little smiley face just to help remind you all, this is a bill we are supporting. LB 630 was introduced by Senator McKinney of North Omaha. What it would do is it just directs school districts to create inclusive dress codes that allow for students to wear various cultural and religious clothing, as well as traditional or protective hairstyles or cultural hairstyles. This is a really big impact for our BIPOC students. It also would protect students from harsh dress code violations, sort of punishments that tend to cause people to miss class. It gives direction to schools to instead ensure that if they do violate dress code, they're at least not missing class and not facing negative consequences from missing class. Why do we support this? We know that this bill would be beneficial to thousands of Nebraska youth. We also want to remind folks that, racial justice is queer justice. All of our struggles and all of our efforts are tied together. And if we look at the breakdown of Nebraska youth, about 32% of LGBTQ youth in Nebraska are Black, Indigenous, or people of color. Every student also, we want every student to be able to come to school as their full self, whether they're queer, whether they're Black, whether they're straight, whether they're not. We want every student to be able to, you know, attend classes as who they are, fully as themselves. I see someone has popped into the waiting room, so I'm gonna get them in. So yeah, that's kind of the brief overview where this bill is at. So far, this bill passed out of committee with unanimous support. I believe it was a 7-0. So everyone was like, this is a great idea. It also has been named a speaker priority. It's also in line with legislation we've passed before in Nebraska by including hairstyles under race discrimination. So it's all good stuff. As far as what comes next for 6:30, is it needs some more support to get to debate for the speaker to put it earlier on in the session. It also needs to have that support continue so it passes all 3 rounds of debate. So that's kind of what's next in the future of 6:30. We wanted you to kind of know more about this bill that would have such a great impact on youth. And maybe tell you a little bit about a bill that you didn't know a lot about before. The next bill that we're highlighting is a bummer. This one is LB 574, the so-called Let Them Grow Act. This was introduced by Senator Kauth of kind of like Southwest Omaha, Millard, beyond area. What this bill would do is it would ban transgender youth and their families from accessing gender-affirming healthcare, including referrals to care, hormone blockers, hormone therapy, and surgery. The way it works is it would punish any doctors providing a referral or providing gender-affirming care, putting them at risk of losing their medical license, as well as would allow for civil suing. Why we oppose it is pretty simply, it's government overreach. We know that medical decisions belong with us as Nebraskans, our families, in collaboration with our doctors, our mental health professionals, not with senators and politicians. Every major medical association supports gender-affirming care. And we also know that doctors shouldn't have to choose between losing their license because they provide best practice care or declining to provide that best practice care. What's happened? This is all pretty new in the last week. So I know a lot of folks are familiar, but for those who aren't, after 8 hours of debate, which stretched over 3 days, 33 senators decided to end debate, and then 30 voted to push the bill forward into the second round of debate. An amendment that would change the legislation to just ban surgery was proposed last week, but not considered. We still oppose the legislation, even if it was just a surgery ban. What comes next? There will be 2 more rounds of debate, select file and final reading. Select file is that last chance for any sort of amendments. So expect a lot more debate around that amendment that has not been considered. What it needs is it needs strong opposition from senators to this government overreach. And senators need more education on why this care is essential and life-saving for young people. How many senators? We just, I can't remember the counts. I think we need like 1 more senator to just break rank and not vote for cloture, just kind of a bigger thing. We'll kind of get more into that, I think, with Q&A, but basically just 1 senator has to break rank and say, this is bad for Nebraska, and let's let it die in debate. As far as what can we do next? So now that we've kind of talked about a couple of bills, including the bill that we've all kind of been watching the last week, let's talk about what we all can do about it, right? So depending on where a bill is of what really interests you, there's different things you can do, contact your different decision makers. If a bill that you like is still in committee, you can contact that committee and urge them to advance it. If it's a bill you don't like and it's in committee, you can kind of keep an eye on it, but the senators need a little less pressure to just keep sitting on it. You can also contact your senator at any time to say your stance on a bill, whether you're for or against it, or if you have concerns, or share your story as it relates to this legislation. If a bill is in that debate round, you can contact your senator, calling, emailing, or asking for a personal meeting. You can also contact other senators that you might hear are on the fence, or senators that represent where your other family members are from, where you have friends, where your business might be, or where you work, if that's different. Also, anytime, this is a good year-round activity. You can share what's happening with LGBTQ rights with your friends and family, your coworkers, your neighbors. You can encourage other people to contact your senators. I always like to think of it as, we're trying to create that wave. So if I write a letter, if I can get 2 other people to write a letter, then we're 3. If they get 2 other people to write a letter, then suddenly we're 7, just kind of exponentially growing from there. You can also push your workplace to support LGBTQ people, both inside the workplace and in policymaking. We've seen some good preliminary support from the business community, and we can always use some more. And you can also talk to your friends, family, your coworkers, your neighbors, those around you, again, about LGBTQ issues and share our stories. If there's anything you leave here today to do, we'd really encourage you to contact your senators on a bill that you care about. I think sometimes we all feel like we have to wait for a perfect time to contact people. I'm going to tell you, there's never a perfect time. Now is the perfect time. It's especially important to make sure that our senators are all hearing from us who support LGBTQ people, as they are getting a flood of hate from the haters, and they really need to hear from us as queer people and our allies. So yeah, if you do nothing else today, choose one of the bills that we've talked about, either in this presentation or that's on our list, or a bill that you've been following personally, and go ahead and just call your senator after this. And Abby will just kind of pop into chat where to find your senator. Yeah. We also have this graphic we'll share around sometimes, and I'm going to also put a little asterisk that, like, even if you send 1 sentence email, or you leave a 1 minute voicemail to your senator, that counts and that matters. We don't always have to have the perfectly crafted message, but if you want to spend some more time to make, a letter or an email, this is my kind of go-to 12 sentences or less formula, which is basically, introducing yourself, where you live, what district you're in, how long you've lived here, what you want them to do, please support or oppose this bill. Then just kind of paragraph 2, just kind of breaking down why it matters to you, give 2 reasons why to support or oppose, share a personal story if you have one. And then that last paragraph being kind of the remix of, again, being like, again, I'm asking you to support or oppose this bill. You can get into contact with me through this way, and just a brief thank you for your time. So this is a pretty quick and easy way to kind of write a good letter. And like I said, every bit matters. So whether you're sending your senator a whole novel or a single sentence, every contact is counted. Senators count every time that a constituent contacts them, in whatever way you do. We know that the system also is made to be confusing. So take this as, an excuse of, like, whatever way we fight back is valuable. Whatever way we fight back is important. Community conversations also, if you're a little burnt out on writing letters or emails, you've been doing that a lot. Community conversations is also essential, between our friends and family, our neighbors, our coworkers. being able to change our environment from one that's hostile to LGBTQ folks to one that's welcoming of gay and trans Nebraskans, that's going to be really essential in creating the Nebraska that we want to see. It's just changing, our immediate circles and then having them change their immediate circles and that kind of progressive change. So I said we'd kind of go quickly through some stuff because we knew that there was a lot going on today, or, I'm sure people have a lot of questions if you've been following the news in the last week on the legislature. So that's our overview. If you don't already, please follow along with us on social media, which we can pop those links into the chat. Choose your favorite social media of choice. And then please also, if you have not already, sign up to be, an advocate with us. We send out updates about stuff that's happening in the legislature, things that are happening across our communities, as well as ways to volunteer and get more involved. So I will go ahead and take us to, I'm going to stop sharing so you can see my little face. Hello. Yeah, if folks have questions, we can now answer them. And I see Mary is ready.
Yes. As you know, I spoke to Senator Dorn just before the vote, and he would not change his mind. But I did thank him afterwards, and he responded to me again. He is convinced, I don't know who convinced him, that the amendment that was offered that would only leave the surgery, that would remove the rest of the affirmative care, is the solution to the problem. I tried to say that that's still limiting and that we shouldn't have this bill at all. But if you have arguments, language that I could use, and I'm leaving the country on Saturday for 2 weeks, so I need to get something to him quickly. What would be the arguments against standing against the amendment also?
So this is something that also, like, we are, because we've heard that as well from senators, that they're like, well, this seems like a compromise. And so we're also working on some more clear kind of like talking points for our advocates to work off of. But if you kind of think about it, it's still the same argument of this is, a decision that should stay with Nebraskans, not with politicians who are not doctors, who are not well versed in the literature, who don't know anything about medicine. We are Nebraskans, and we're not really a fan of the government telling us what to do. We also know that for young people who do receive gender affirming surgeries, it's an extremely rare circumstance, but it's one that happens after a lot of consideration and a lot of consultation with medical professionals and mental health professionals. So if a young person is eligible for a gender affirming surgery, they've already gone through years and years of consideration. And it's not a choice that is made lightly. As with any surgery, there's always a lot of consideration that goes into anything, whether it's knee surgery or, if you need surgery on other parts of yourself for medical reasons, there's a lot of time and consideration that goes into it. So just like with the rest of the bill, we know that it's unnecessary. We know that it doesn't belong in the legislature. We know it's also a part of the larger narrative attacking transgender people and our healthcare access. That, we could be determining better things. We could be using our time on better legislation, feeding kids or housing, our community. So Yeah, go ahead, Abby.
I just also wanted to point out that in Kentucky, they originally passed a ban that was surgery only and then came back and passed a complete ban. So it is, give an inch, take a mile. And so that is why we're really trying to kill it as it stands. But we really don't know ultimately what will happen. And we're just following it very closely.
Let's see. I'm going back through our chat to see. Okay, so we talked about priority designation. I think we were trying to explain how many senders it was needed to defeat LB 574. Again, we really just need one senator to help break the or help to end debate. It's a little bit complicated if you've heard people talking about cloture and filibuster and blah, blah, blah. When something is filibustered, they have to have what's called a cloture vote or a vote to end debate. That vote to end debate needs 33 senators to end it. On 574, they had exactly 33 senators. So if one senator would join the rest in saying, this is actually not good for Nebraska, then it would just die. If it doesn't get cloture, it doesn't get voted on. So hopefully that adds some clarity. I know it's confusing, and it's something that like I learn something new about the legislature every week, and it's very exciting. It's our job to keep an eye on it. But someone asked about Senator McDonnell. If he is your senator, please continue to contact him. I know that that there's a lot of folks who are frustrated with Senator McDonnell, and I understand that for all the reasons. So yes, some reminders that, handwritten letters can make a difference too. If you're sick and tired of sending emails, try writing one by hand and mailing it to your senator, just to really get it on their desk. I'm not sure what slide we were looking at the time that someone was asking about it. I think it was our how to write a good letter to your representative. I will put that back up if people want to take a screenshot of it. I know we've shared it on our social media before. When? I don't know. So if anyone wants to take a screenshot of how to write a good letter, go ahead. I'll leave this up for a couple of minutes while we answer some other questions. There's a question about if we have an idea about what's going on with that amendment on 574. Again, we're watching it closely. We're not really sure what will happen in the next round of debate, which is why we are just trying to watch as closely as we can. There's a question about how many other senators think that this amendment is the solution. We don't know. It is something that kind of came up quickly last week. It's a appealing answer for people who just want to move on from this. If they think that a compromise, make it less bad, is helpful. But I would say anytime that something is amended to be less bad, there's still the bad part of it. Less bad still includes bad. So yeah, I think from what we know, there's a lot of senators, but it might still be the same senators who, already support the legislation that would support the amendment as well. So other questions from folks? Again, feel free if you use the raise your hand function, or if you want to use the chat.
I just want to say we did also have some graphics. We did a campaign called Defend Trans Youth Nebraska, and there were some graphics and things that went along with that, and kind of a social media guide that was shared out through our socials. And I can talk to our comms person about putting some of that information in another place that's accessible. People want to continue to use that campaign. I'll just talk with them and see if that's something we can do.
I think I can find that link, because I believe we shared in the last week. So if folks are also looking at our social media pages, if you would like to go just kind of scroll down a little bit, you'll probably find the toolkit, but I'll see if I can pull that link while we are on this call as well.
Great. And while you do that, Erin, there's another question in the chat from Martha. Does anyone know if Nebraska has restrictions on surgery for intersex newborns? Actually, the bill 574 includes carve-outs for intersex newborns that would allow doctors to perform surgeries in cases where an intersex child is born. And so they understand somewhat the biology of how sex is determined, and that it is not a binary, because they have created this carve out, but they're still using talking points and talking about there only being two sexes or two genders. So that's very frustrating. Yes, Jennifer, there is a place where you can see how senators voted. It is on the Nebraska legislature website. There you go. Erin just plopped that link right in the chat. Thank you, Erin. That will show you how they voted. There are some senators that voted to end debate, but did not vote to advance the bill. So that's an interesting stance. And I think sometimes those senators might be open to more education on the issue. So yeah, if you look through that list and you see folks who voted not to advance or were present not voting, might be good folks to reach out to and present some education.
I have found our Defend Trans Youth Nebraska toolkit. So I'm going to pop that in the chat as well for folks. There's a couple of really awesome graphics that Johnny, our comms manager, made. So all credit to them, but feel free to use those as well. Create your own posts using them, or kind of make something in spirit or like-mindedness to this. So yes, legislative day is next week. Do we think there will still be ongoing conversations? Yes. Oral votes happen this week. I do also want to say that I know a lot of our time and attention has been on LB 574, which is that gender affirming care ban, and rightfully so. But there are a lot of, I guess I could say, and there are also a lot of more, there are a lot more LGBT issues we also want to make sure that our senators are thinking about. So even as our conversations continue about guaranteeing that trans youth have access to healthcare, we also want senators thinking about non-discrimination protections for our community. We also want them thinking about, like LB 630, that bill that would change student dress codes to be more inclusive. We also want senators thinking about how we can help address the HIV crisis in Nebraska. One of the bills that is prioritized this year is 307, that would introduce what's called or would allow for syringe service programs in Nebraska under the authority of local health departments to help curb the spread of HIV, which Nebraska, like a lot of states, saw a rise in HIV infections in the last couple of years. So, you know, there are a lot of things that we want our senators to be thinking about when it comes to our community. And no matter what happens this week, with whatever they're set to debate this week, there will still be things to keep talking to them about. So yes, and if folks are like, what's up with legislative day, we are going to the Capitol on Monday for our LGBTQ legislative day, our second annual one. Our last one was in 2020 in March, as the world came crashing down around us. So we're happy and excited to be doing this a second time. If you have already signed up, thank you for joining us for that event. That will be next Monday. If you are interested in joining us, our initial list is full, but we do have a wait list that will send out information to folks about how to join us just for Senator conversations. Yes, Martha, I think you did ask last time about wheelchair accessibility. It is accessible but difficult. So you can get in, and I know some folks who are joining us next Monday are using assistive walking aids. There is one entrance, which I want to say is the south entrance. No.
North.
North entrance. I don't know my directions. That is the entrance for wheelchair accessibility. Yes, I know the renovation has been making things all wonky. I wish they would just add an actual ramp with their renovations if they're doing that anyways, but that's
There is a ramp on the north entrance, and there are elevators to the second floor rotunda that you can access from that north entrance. It's accessible, but as Aaron said, difficult. So yeah, we would love to have you join us if you're able.
yeah, Mary. Hope you are currently muted.
I asked Abby when I was there on Thursday about a bathroom on the second floor, and she hadn't found one. I thought there had to be one. So I got a map of the Capitol with another group that I was there for a legislative day. And on the north side of the building, and I was only doing right around and not going to the north side, there is an accessible bathroom very close to the elevator on the north side of the building that says that it's handicapped accessible also.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, I know the Capitol is an old building, a lot of tight spaces. So thank you folks who have been around to check this out. The rally is this Friday, yes, and it is outside. We are having a Trans Day Visibility Rally this Friday at 5:30 until about 7, where we'll be listening to, uplifting, and celebrating trans voices. My cat is sneezing. You okay? No more cat sneezes. Yes, and we will be outside the Capitol on the north side. Basically just look for people holding signs and you're in the right place. So yeah. Sarah asks, do you have any tips for writing your senator if they were the one responsible for a bill we wanted to oppose? Yes, and that would be mainly to, again, just say what you want them to understand. And if they have introduced one of these bills that are harmful, letting them know that as their constituent that you're not happy about it. Their job is to represent all of us, and you can remind that. You can remind them of that. I know that sometimes senators will say, I haven't heard any opposition to this bad thing I've done. And the goal is to always make them liars if they say that, or to make it so they can't say that. So, I know it's hard. I have a unsupportive senator as well representing me. So I know it's frustrating. Eric asks, when is the best time of day to reach a senator via phone, or does it vary based on the senator? I don't know if you have some better perspective, Abby, other than don't call around lunchtime because they won't be there and their staff will be out.
Yeah, lunchtime is a bad time to call because their staff are out also getting lunch. And often you won't reach the senator in person. Even if you call the office, you're going to get a staff member. But the staff members do pass information along to senators, and we ask that you go ahead and talk with the staff. You can ask for the senator specifically. You can ask to make an appointment to talk with the senator if you'd like on the phone. We have heard from multiple folks that there are senators who are not being responsive to constituents, and so that makes it very difficult. But you can always ask for that appointment, and then if you can't get it or you don't get traction that way, go ahead and talk to the staff member.
I don't know if they're listed by name anywhere.
They are in a roster, but I don't know if the rosters are out yet. You can get a roster in the clerk's office.
Yeah, if you ever want information, or if you want a big poster of all the faces of our senators, if you go to the clerk's office in the Capitol, you're able to get, they'll have little booklets with contact information or have little faces. These sort of handout, printout educational materials they have for free because they want Nebraskans to take it and bring it to their classes, bring it to their workplaces. Yeah, and I've always found that when I call my senator, the person picks up and says, "Hi, this is Carolyn with Senator Geist's office." And I'm like, "Hi, Carolyn." So they usually give you their name to start. So it's you can kind of have that kind of name to name, at least if you haven't met them before. Thank you, Martha. That's very kind. I'm happy that we can be that light for people when things are really stressful or really hard. And glad we can help to demystify the Capitol a little bit. The more that we are involved and watching our Capitol and watching our senators and what they do, the more accountable they are to us. So I'm glad that you all have joined us today to learn a little bit more so that you can hold your senators accountable and remind them that all of Nebraska is watching what they do. It's about 12:50, so if we have some more questions, again, feel free, if you want to raise your hand or come off mute, you can, or you can use the chat. Or if someone wanted to see something in the presentation again, please let us know.
And if we don't see anything pop up, we may go ahead and end a little early because we know that often you have other places to be, or this is your lunchtime and you might want 10 minutes to eat. Thank you so much for being with us today and for all that you have lent to this work through this session. We really, when people thank me or my staff, I always also like to point it back out to the fact that it takes a village and that you are all a part of this village. So we're just honored to carry and help organize this work, but thank you also for being engaged citizens.
Yeah, and especially if you are a young person or you know young people in your life who aren't able to vote yet, or if you're someone who's not able to vote for whatever reason, this is a great way to just still be involved. They're still our senator, even if we can or cannot vote. And they're responsible for what happens in our communities. So taking action, writing letters, calling, talking to our friends and family, all of that is important to just keep up the good work together. So yeah.
Shall we give people a little bit of their time back?
Sounds good to me.
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Bye. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and stop our recording. Goodbye, recording land.